So, Iran. There's something that I see nobody talking about when they talk about Iran, and that is how this war really affects you. In fact, us all, long term. And by that, I don't mean the terrifying Terminator reality of World War III. No, I mean the economics of it. And again, I don't mean the gold price. I don't mean the oil price. People talk about that all the time. I mean the everyday behavioural and psychological economics of it. Because the real story here isn't just about Iran. It's about what really happens to ordinary people when the system of rules, global rules, is publicly ignored. When one country can just invade another without any consultation, can just go, we're going to bomb you now, strap in. Because right now, ignoring the rules is in every part of our society. It's whether companies can poison a river and still pay their shareholders millions. It's in whether powerful men can abuse girls for years and still move through polite society, elite society, untouched. So I want to look at the science and clear effects that the loose adherence to the rules does to our societies, our brains, our behaviour. That's what this video is about. So right at the top, I just want to acknowledge something, because if you've been watching the news lately, like doom scrolling the news, and that is kind of a technical term, isn't it, with the news at the moment, doom scrolling it, it feels like doom. But these images of strikes and counter strikes and leaders speaking with like the casual confidence of people who never once considered that the rules might apply to them, you'll have felt, like me, I'm guessing, at least a tightness, or maybe even a low-level hum of dread that follows you around your day, that you can't quite put your finger on, like a sense that the floor is slightly less solid than it was. And I want to point out that that's not a weakness. That is your amygdala, the oldest, most ancient part of your brain. And it's the amygdala doing exactly what it was built to do, which is scanning the horizon, detecting threat. And I'm going to come back to that later, what the amygdala activation does to us, neurologically and societally. Because that amygdala fact is related directly to the rulelessness of all of this. And I should mention, when I talk about the rules, right, I need to mention this. I know rules are annoying, like properly annoying, genuinely, viscerally, personally annoying. And the kind of annoying I know that makes you just want to live off-grid in the woods, you know, until you remember that, oh, living in the woods, off-grid, also needs planning permission. Maybe I should can I just bomb Iran? Can I bomb Iran? I choose bombing Iran, actually. I don't want to do this anymore. Nobody likes the rules. Nobody has ever skipped into a building and thought, my God, you have a compliance document? This is going to be great. Because rules feel like somebody telling you that you're not to be trusted, right? Which is exactly what they are. And actually, that's the point. We are not to be trusted. No one is. Because, well, we're not to be trusted. We all want to get away with everything, right? I want what I want. Rules treat you like a potential problem, which you are. I am. It's just that on a personal level, that's offensive. Because nobody likes to think of themselves as a problem. So that when somebody stands up and says, these institutions are strangling us. This red tape is killing us. The blob is running everything. The bureaucrats have won. My God, that feeling is real, right? The annoyance is real. I really go, yeah, the bureaucrats. Or not sexually, just hurt them. I don't like the bureaucrats. Because that's the standard framing, right? Especially from a certain type of anti-establishment politician.
And you may loathe populism, but I tell you a funny thing, it's becoming very popular. And it has great benefits. No more financial contributions, no more European Court of Justice, no more common fisheries policy.
You have to be very afraid of me if you're employed by the institutions of the European Union, because I would want you sacked. All of you, gone, out, go.
Let's cut the red tape. Let's set free our dreams, and yes, let's make America great again. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by getting rid of a lot of unnecessary regulation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Red tape that's standing in the way of getting things done. I just want to get things done. That's just me. I'm a doer, not like these absolute bureaucrats. So what are the rules actually for? Other than, obviously, pissing us all off and ruining the party? Well, the honest answer is that without rules, you don't have freedom. It can't be that clear, right? Oxford anthropologists have looked at 60 societies on every continent, hunter-gatherer, kingdoms, modern states. They were basically looking for a counter-example to that, a society that answered the question differently. And they didn't find one, not one. Every single society, every human culture independently arrived at the same cooperative norms.
So my colleagues and I analysed the ethnographic accounts of ethics from the archives. So we looked at over 600 sources describing the ethics of 60 cultures around the world to see whether they thought these types of behaviours were morally good, and to see how widespread they were, and to see how they were distributed. And we found, to our surprise, these cooperative behaviours were always considered morally good, always considered the right thing to do. The point is that all people everywhere in social groups face these similar kinds of problems, and so they've evolved or invented or developed similar kinds of solutions, similar kinds of moral rules for solving them.
Now, somebody watching this will say, but listen, if every human society arrives at the same norms anyway, why do we need formal rules? Won't they just emerge on their own? And the answer is yes. In a village, people that all know each other. But we live in a world of 8 billion strangers, multinational corporations and nation states that will never meet the person their decisions affect. Spontaneous norms only work when reputation travels. They stop working the moment the powerful can act without consequence. Rules create trust so that we can safely move around a world of strangers with brains built for a village of 150 people. And you can see me talking in more detail about that in this video here, where I talk about the Dunbar number, which is essentially your brain is only built to take in about 150 people at any given time. It just can't understand a world of more than 150 people. That's why we need trust, that's why we need rules. Because the problem is the same absolutely anywhere. Power, if unchecked, concentrates. And once it concentrates, it takes. Because assumed rules are everything. Like, think of a queue. Nobody's forcing you to stand in line. But a queue exists because everyone has unconsciously agreed, mostly silently, that that's how civilized life works, right? The moment that somebody breaks that rule, and we've all been in a queue when that happens, they walk to the front and they get served first. And then if nothing happens to them, because if you're a big lad and you can jump to the front of that queue, elbowing grannies in the face and get to the front, why would you ever queue again? Yeah? Life's busy. You got stuff to do. These grannies aren't going to elbow themselves in the face. Trust me. I don't know why you trust me on that. I mean, I don't know why I'd have more information about grandmothers elbowing. All right. The prefrontal cortex, the newest and most evolved part of the brain, is the part of the brain that handles long-range planning, abstract reasoning, and institutional thinking, which is essentially the ability to trust systems that you can't see, the ability to cooperate with strangers, the ability to believe that playing by the rules will eventually produce a fair outcome. It is, in a very real sense, the part of the brain that makes democracy possible. Whereas the amygdala is older, and it's faster and it's cheaper to run, but the amygdala handles immediate threat, tribal loyalty, survival. And what the amygdala is good at, and it's brilliant at its job, but its job is not compatible with building functional civic societies. Under normal circumstances, when you feel reasonably safe, reasonably in control, reasonably able to judge your circumstances and plan and feel like you can go through your day safely, the prefrontal cortex absolutely runs the show. The amygdala is there, but it's managed. It's kept low. You don't need it. Everything's fine. But under chronic stress, and crucially, under the specific stress, a feeling that you have no control over what's happening to you. The balance tips. Amy Arnsten, Professor of Neuroscience at Yale University, has spent her career documenting exactly what happens next. Her research shows that high stress triggers a cascade of chemical changes that physically weaken the prefrontal cortex, while simultaneously causing the amygdala to grow. Like, not metaphorically, structurally. The amygdala puts on dendrites. You know, dendrites. And you know what that means. Basically, it grows. And at the same time, the prefrontal cortex loses dendrites. A double whammy. The same time the prefrontal cortex is getting weaker and more primitive, the brain circuits that generate emotion like fear are getting stronger.
The highest order parts of our prefrontal give us empathy and moral conscience, and so are really important for our social relationships and having healthy relationships. But what we've learned is that exposure, even to quite a mild stress, if it makes us feel unsafe, and if we feel we have no control over that stressor, so we feel helpless, the prefrontal cortex very rapidly can go offline. And it switches control of our behavior, our thoughts, our reactions to more primitive brain circuits. And we get symptoms like this: decreased self-regulation and top-down control, so increased compulsive or habitual behaviors, increased reactive behaviors and feelings, and impaired inhibitory control, so increased anger, for example, where we can't control our temper. We often then have reduced insight about ourselves and others, because these are often unconscious autonomic reactions where we don't have the foot in the door to stop ourselves and say, you know, this is not going to be helpful in the long run. And we can have impaired judgment about ourselves and others and moral conscience, and lose empathy and create a vicious cycle in our relationships.
And it sets up a vicious cycle, as she calls it. Stress weakens the prefrontal cortex. A weakened prefrontal cortex means less ability to regulate the amygdala, regulate emotion. Less regulation means more fear response. More fear response means more stress hormones. More stress hormones means a weaker prefrontal cortex. Round and round and round. Or to put it in Star Wars terms,
fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Now, the critical finding, the one that connects with everything directly that I've been talking about, is this. It's not just stress itself that does the damage. It is uncontrollable stress. And the research is really specific about this. When people feel like they have agency, when they believe that they can influence the outcome of their lives, the toxic brain changes, they don't occur in the same way. It's the experience of powerlessness that flips the switch. So, a society where ordinary people are repeatedly shown that the rules don't apply to the powerful, where effort and fairness produce no reliable outcome, where the game appears entirely rigged and visibly so, that's not just politically demoralizing. It is, in a precise neurological sense, chronically stressful in a way that causes the most damage. It produces, at population scale, exactly the brain state in which rational, democratic participation becomes harder. And at the same time, rather unfortunately, the appeal of a strong leader who promises simply to cut through it all becomes neurologically almost irresistible. You can see how the people getting rid of the rules are the same people who benefit most from a frightened, amygdala-dominated electorate. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not just making it up, it's not just rhetoric, right? Because actually, fortunately, there's a line from Steve Bannon, one of the architects of Trump's campaigns to get him into the White House, one of his biggest influences. Steve Bannon told the writer Michael Lewis, "The real opposition is the media. And the way to deal with the media is to flood the zone with shit." Now, most people hear that and they think, oh yeah, get it, yeah, propaganda. Lie often, hope that it sticks, right? But the writer Jonathan Rauch pointed out that this isn't about persuasion. It's actually about disorientation.
Trump is a student of propaganda, and he understands that one of the things you need to do is confuse people, disorient them, put out so many different conflicting accounts of facts that people don't know what to believe or who to believe. They don't know if you can ever believe anything at all.
The goal is not believe my lie. It is stop believing anyone. Which is an incredible political strategy, isn't it? It's not like win the argument. No, it's like, okay, let's burn the room where the argument's happening. We win by default. We weren't in the room. That when you saturate the information environment with high volume, contradictory, emotionally charged messaging, citizens don't arrive at a different truth. They give up on truth being findable. The psychologist Karen Stenner calls this normative threat, which is the perception that shared social order is collapsing, right? Yeah, sounds familiar. And her research shows that when people experience it, they become dramatically more susceptible to authoritarian leadership. Not because they've been persuaded, but because uncertainty becomes unbearable. And a strong leader who promises to cut through it feels like oxygen. All right, I'm with the big, oh, thank God. My dad's bigger than your dad. Great, I get the skateboard and I'm safe. Which is, of course, exactly the worldview that benefits those people that already have wealth, power and influence. Because once people stop believing that the rules can protect them, they stop demanding better rules. They stop acting collectively and they retreat into cynicism. And cynicism, sadly, is the most useful thing to the already powerful people. Because rules are a substitute for private power. If you're rich enough, you buy private healthcare. If you're rich enough, you don't need justice to work evenly. You can hire better lawyers. If you're rich enough, you don't need stability for everyone. You just need escape routes. And I mean that literally. The idea of a compound in New Zealand is not a joke. Genuinely, Peter Thiel has one. Look at this footage. It's mad.
Buying a house in New Zealand has become a sort of code for getting apocalypse insurance, as Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, put it. Saying that you're buying a house in New Zealand is kind of a wink-wink. Say no more, he said. I have a broker who sells old ICBM silos, and they're nuclear hardened, and they kind of look like they would be interesting to live in. While some have previously pointed to New Zealand as Thiel's backup country.
But most people, the majority of people, do need rules. Most people need taxes and healthcare to function. Most people need regulations so rivers aren't poisoned. Most people need anti-corruption rules so that you can't buy politics and politicians. Most people need international law so that weaker countries are just not simply at the mercy of the stronger ones, right? In other words, when rules collapse, wealth rises upward and risk falls downward. Wealth go up, risk goes down. Every time. My wealth goes up, my risk goes down. Your wealth goes down, your risk goes up. Sorry. And that's the direct through line from a bombed negotiation in Iran to your rivers getting polluted. It's the same principle. Because rules are not there to annoy the powerful. They're there to protect the less powerful.
No more financial contributions. No more European Court of Justice. No more common fisheries policy.
The amygdala, and this is a technical term, finds committees deeply shit. Neurologically. It's in the research. And that is the truly, madly, deeply boring truth, is that the tedious, boring stuff works. Ugh. And you know what that means? The amygdala. All hail the prefrontal cortex. Amygdala. And the people that are telling you that boring is the problem are almost always the people that benefit the most from the alternative. They're riding your amygdala to their own massive bank accounts. The amygdala loves a strong man, yes, but here's what the amygdala hates. A person who's informed, connected, and not alone, because you are not alone. This video is proof of that alone, because the research is just as clear on the other side. Agency, the actual feeling that your actions matter, because they do, is the precise antidote to the toxic stress response. Because you don't need to fix international law today. Relax. You just need to feel like you're doing something, because you actually are when you do. Because our small, everyday, boring actions reach way, way further than our primitive ape brains can understand. So, vote in the local elections. Support the journalists asking tedious questions about planning documents. Read the thing, share the thing, show up, not because it will feel like a revolution, because it won't, but because every single act of informed collective participation is literally, neurologically, your prefrontal cortex telling your amygdala, back off, sit the down. And if you want the full scientific watertight video on why your actions matter way more than you can comprehend, than any of us can comprehend, you can see it in my video here, which I'll also put the end of this video on a link, which is essentially the case for hope, because there is way more hope than we can understand in our limited brains. Watch it when the doom scrolling gets too loud. The powerful want you overwhelmed and cynical because it makes it easier for them. And everyone likes an easier life. And so the lesson here, incredibly, is be relentlessly, obsessively, aggressively boring about all of this. Refuse to give up on the queue. That's the most English thing that I've ever said. But just believe in the queue, man. Don't give up on the queue. It's all we've got sometimes. And if you want to keep the boring revolution funded, because making this video rather than, I don't know, reaction content and rage bait does actually cost money, I'd love it if you could support the channel on Patreon. The link is below. And really, to be clear, I'm not trying to get rich. This is genuinely just trying to make this cost neutral, which is appropriately a very boring financial ambition. At least it's on brand.